Hello and welcome to episode 160 of Drink the Movies. I'm Brian here, as always, with Michaela. And Michaela, have you ever had like the experience where, I don't know, like the leader of the universe sends you and your whole family to go govern a place, and then sends in a whole army to get rid of you? You're left out in the desert to find your new way. Has that ever happened to you, or has that only happened to Timothy Chalamet?
I mean, a case could be made for David Lynch as well, to be fair.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like this is almost like a satire on corporate America, where you're given some sort of existential, like, go tackle that mountain, and then it's like, never mind, we're gonna cut you off at the knees before you get to tackle the mountain. It's very reminiscent, I think, of some of the great series that we see today, which is
Mm-hmm.
interesting, because most of them, I think, got it from Dune, right? From Frank Herbert's Dune, which was an
Yeah.
amazing book before it was an amazing movie, before it became this amazing movie that we are talking about.
That's right. Yeah, it spawned a lot of stuff, and the original novel Dune by Frank Herbert has inspired a lot of stuff, right? Basically, any science fiction thing that came after 1965 pays homage to Dune, and Dune's going to take a little bit of guidance here too, I think, in the story, and we're going to talk about that once we get into the episode. But Dune 2 was something that we've been looking forward to for a long time. We thought we had it on the calendar to cover like back in this past, I don't know, it was like October or something, and then
Yes.
obviously got pushed back to right now, and we just saw it last night. So it's still fresh in our minds. It's as fresh in our mind as the spices in the air on Arrakis. So let's do this, Michaela. We need ourselves a cocktail because I'm thirsty. You watch that much sand in IMAX for 3 hours, so like that dries you out, right? For sure. So
Sure.
let's do this. Let's take a quick break, and we'll be right back to whip up this week's cocktail.
So, Brian, you
Hmm.
said, and you were not wrong, that after watching 3 hours of basically a giant desert planet where they are
Hmm.
recycling their own moisture in order to stay alive, that we were very thirsty. I will say that your thirst will definitely be quenched by this drink because it's got about 75 things of
It's very
liquid to
busy.
go as ingredients to make
It,
this. It's a very, very busy drink.
it
And we're
has
going to say
almost as
that.
many. It has almost as many ingredients as Dune Part 2 has characters in it to keep track
Yeah,
of. So
yeah.
we'll see how we do on the cocktail and on the movie as we go through this.
Yeah, for sure. But this is The Spice Must Flow. It is from The Educated Barfly, which we have really enjoyed. That is a really great site if you've not been looking at different cocktails and stuff. I think we've
Hmm. Hmm.
um, used them as inspiration for a couple of our cocktails in the past. So kudos to them. This one is real interesting. When you first showed it to me, I was like, this is awesome, but it looks real busy. And so we're going to talk about it as we get into these ingredients here.
Absolutely. So the ingredients themselves are not too like out of the norm. You're going to be able to mostly find these together, but there are a lot of them. So everyone out there, grab yourself a pen and paper or like a metal cylinder. I guess that's how you write down notes in the Dune world. So go ahead
That's
and
how they do it.
grab one of those, and you're going to need to get yourself 2 ounces of Reposado tequila, a half ounce of Lillet Blanc, a half ounce of dry curacao, 1 ounce of fresh orange juice, a half ounce of spiced demerara syrup, 1 egg white, and then you're going to go with some bitters here, a lot of bitters. So 8 drops of orange bitters and 6 drops of cinnamon bitters. We couldn't find cinnamon bitters in time, so Michaela actually made some by just infusing some aromatic bitters with like a cinnamon stick for about a day. That probably worked okay, we think. You can also, I've seen like spiced cherry bitters, so just something you're just wanting to get some spice in this, right? The cocktail is called The Spice Must Flow. And then you're going to need a cinnamon stick for garnishing that here. This has an egg white in it, Michaela. So what we're going to do is we're going to shake that pretty vigorously in a shaker tin with no ice, called a dry shake. That's going to get it nice and frothy. Then go ahead and add some ice, shake it again, and strain it into like a coupe glass. That's going to look lovely, and then grate some of that cinnamon right on top because spice must flow, and the spice is the name of the game here. But I have to say, unfortunately, this was just too busy. It was too busy, I think.
It was really. It was really busy. We started to put this drink together, and we both like fell in love immediately with the dry curacao. I'd never had that before. I'd always had blue
Oh yeah.
curacao. This is not that, everybody. Just so we're clear. If it's blue, your drink is wrong. Don't do it. Dry curacao is this orange liqueur, and it is, oh my gosh, it smelled amazing. And so I was super excited with the Lillet Blanc and the tequila, and I was like, this is going to be really like spicy because of all the bitters, but like fruity and maybe a little sour with the acidity of kind of the orange taste.
Mhm.
But it just kind of became a mess. And that is unfortunate. I don't know what I would do to even fix this because there's so many ingredients where I'm like, should we do more demerara syrup or less? I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah, it was kind of unfortunate too because all these ingredients are really great. We were excited to do that and start exploring dry curacao as an ingredient we've been wanting to work with for a while. So finally got us to go out and get a bottle of that. But yeah, it just seemed a little bit muddy. We were drinking this together and we kind of looked at each other and we're both like, this is good and I'm going to keep drinking it, but it's like, I don't know, it's like missing the mark or something. I think if I was going to make it again, I would probably skip the spiced demerara syrup and just go with regular simple syrup just to clean it up just a little bit. Let the tequila and let
Hmm.
the dry curacao shine a little bit more in the cocktail. Spiced demerara syrup is something you can buy. There's a company that makes it out of New Orleans, spiced demerara syrup. You can buy it. There's a couple other manufacturers. We actually made our own just with making a simple syrup and then using demerara sugar as opposed to regular table sugar, and then adding in the baking spices like they would in those packaged ones. But yeah, I think it was just a little bit too busy ingredient wise for me. I would like it a little bit simpler, and then you can still hammer on those bitters, the cinnamon bitters, that cinnamon to give you kind of a nice spicy kick and nose. Aromatic kind of bit to it,
For
especially
sure.
with the egg white there. But yeah, I think this was just a little bit too much. It just needed a little bit more restraint, just like Denis Villeneuve shows when crafting this Dune world.
Yeah. I definitely feel like when we make a cocktail and we're like, how can we relate it to the film? This is kind of the opposite because Dune was pretty well balanced. It had a lot of everything going on. And this was kind of, I don't know, kind of convoluted. I mean, we've talked before about tequila is usually not my favorite
Mhm.
ingredient to add to a cocktail because it can be so um solid, like it's a marker that you will definitely pick up on your tongue and it will maybe
Mhm.
overshadow other things. I
Sure.
didn't
Yeah.
even taste the tequila in this drink, so if you don't like tequila and you want to try a tequila drink, give this a shot. I mean, maybe it's your thing. It's super
Yeah.
creamy though with the egg white, and so yeah, it's worth,
Yeah.
if you love like flips or anything with egg white in it, like a whiskey sour. I definitely think you should give it a shot. Maybe we just didn't have the spice. The
Yeah.
spice wasn't
That's
flowing for us.
the
Maybe.
spice was not flowing. We were not flowing. I don't know for sure. It was beautiful drink. It had a really beautiful mouthfeel to it. But yeah, the flavors there, it was a little bit too muddled. So I'd like to strip it down maybe and try it again in the future. But let us know if you have any good Dune 2 cocktails. We actually had a couple of cocktails at our local theater when we went and saw this last night. We're probably going to be talking about those on a little Patreon snippet here at some point in the next week or so. So let us know what you were drinking to go along with Dune Part 2. But for now, Michaela, what we need to do, let's go bust out that bottle of dry curacao. We'll try our hand at this again. Take a quick break, and we'll be right back to chat about this week's film, Dune Part 2.
This world is beyond cruelty. My family's been fighting the Harkonnens for centuries. They were massacred alongside my father.
Your father didn't believe in revenge.
Spoiler warning for Dune Part 2. If you've not yet seen Dune Part 2, which is likely because it came out maybe 3 days ago, you should press pause. You should go make yourself a Spice Must Flow cocktail. And you can come back after you've seen it so we could chat about it because we're going to talk about all the things, and there's a lot of things. So if you've not seen it, you've been warned. This is a spoiler warning. That's what they're for.
That's right. Yeah, spoiler warning for Dune Part 2. If you have not had a chance to see it or read the book, you're not going to want to have this one spoiled for you because it is a good one for sure. Just released in 2024. It was directed by Denis Villeneuve, and it brings back Timothy Chalamet as a Paul Atreides, Zendaya as the girl from his dreams, Chani, Rebecca Ferguson is playing his mother, Jessica, and Stilgar, the true believer here of the Fremen, is played by Javier Bardem. There's a bunch of other people that are in this, and we're going to kind of highlight them as we work our way through the story beats a little bit. So, Michaela, as you mentioned, this was based on a book, the 1965 sci-fi classic gospel, whatever you want to call it here. Frank Herbert releases 1965 Dune. And it's coming from two like serials that he'd written for Analog Magazine. Now, Dune Messiah is the follow-up novel here, which was written by Frank Herbert in 1969. And Denis Villeneuve has said that Dune Part 3 is going to go into that. It's going to cover Dune Messiah, but we're gonna have to wait for that at least a couple years. We had 2021 first Dune, 2024 Dune Part 2, so maybe 2026, 2027. We'll find out what happens to these guys. I don't know for sure. But yeah, that's what we're talking about. That was the source material, and this spawned some things. There was a mini series on TV around the year 2000, but most people are at least a little bit more familiar with. I know you are more familiar with. That is the 1984 David Lynch version of Dune, and we're going to be talking about that on Patreon because I've only seen that once a super long time ago. You're a little bit more familiar with it, but I've read the book. You never have, so your Dune is that Dune. That's David Lynch's Dune. That's your Dune,
Yes.
right?
Yes, it is a baron that has lots of pustules all over him. It is a blue-eyed
Gross.
David Lynch.
And
Oh my
blue-eyed
gosh.
David Lynch. David Lynch is the director.
No, what's his name? Oh my gosh. What's his name?
His
Is he
name
really the
is
director? I've been thinking that's the actor's name for my entire life. Are you kidding me?
wow. No, you're Kyle MacLachlan is the
Oh, that right. But Sean Young, oh my gosh. Like maybe one of the best Chanis ever. Maybe. I don't know. We'll have to talk about it.
we'll
I don't know.
we'll talk about it.
We'll talk about it. But anyway, we're going to talk about it on the Patreon. So if you all are interested in doing a comparison with our 1984 versus, 2021 version or 2024, that's when you'll have to do it. You'll have to go get on our Patreon site.
That's right, absolutely. So, yeah, going to be getting into Doom Part 2. We actually covered Doom Part 1 here on the podcast, so go listen to that. I'll put a link to that show down in the show description there so you can find that a little bit easier. But it's going to pick up basically right where we left off Doom Part 1. This is basically a two-part film. I've seen a lot of people saying that this is the best sequel maybe ever made, and I take a little bit of issue with that. It's just like the finishing of the story, right? I don't think that Two Towers is a sequel to Fellowship of the Ring. I don't think that this is a sequel to Dune Part 1. I think it's just like the next parts of that
Right.
story, right? You're going to watch this all together one day, and then this one's going to start up, and we're going to meet one of our new members of the cast, Florence Pugh, who's playing Princess Irulan, and she's basically writing in a journal. It's serving as kind of a setup for what's about to happen, but also just a bit of a reminder as to what happened in the last episode of Dune.
Right. In the last episode. Yeah.
Previously on Dune.
I agree with you completely. I don't think that it's fair to say that this is a sequel. In reality, this could have been an 18-hour film or a 7-hour kind of film that they just broke up into pieces, right? I mean, it looks as if, it starts exactly like 3-4 minutes after the first one ends. So I think you're absolutely right in that sense. We need to talk about Princess Irulan because first of all, she's played by Florence Pugh, who everybody should know I'm in love with. And so she's writing like, we got to talk about the art direction again. Dune Part 1 got all of these accolades, and I see no reason why it wouldn't continue because her world is very different. It's very different than Caladan, which we saw at the beginning of Dune 1. It is very different than Arrakis because it's not filled with sand. It's like very like severe and austere, but also like over the top. Lots of lace, lots of lots of quiet, like tons of money, I feel like. And she's writing in this. She's got this beautiful kind of headdress looking thing on. That's like subtle, but like probably was made out of pearls that came out of a baby oyster. That, you know, I don't know. It just looks very rich and yet incredibly cold. And that,
Okay.
you know, it sets you up, I think, for trying to understand kind of who she is and what part she's playing. Because she's the emperor's daughter, and she's trying to set things up, set up her story somehow in her journal. And you don't really know why at the beginning, because this is the first time we see her.
In the shadows of Arrakis lie many secrets, but the darkest of them all may remain.
I really like it. It kind of sets it up and it lays the groundwork for the story, right? She's basically kind of giving the history of what happened. She's talking about her father, who's Emperor Shaddam the Fourth, who's played by Christopher Walken, which is amazing. I love Christopher Walken. And you know, it's talking about how sad he is. It's showing, it's like flashing to him, like looking a picture of Duke Atreides, and basically how like he had to more or less stab them in the back, right? And in their line. And it goes on to talk a little bit about that, right? He's saying, you know, I really loved them. They had been like this family for like 90 generations or something, but you know, eventually, you know, they just got a little bit too big for the britches, and as the emperor, you have to do what the emperor has to do, and that's going to be part of what is grappled with over the course of the film, especially from the perspective of the emperor and Princess Irulan. So let's go back down to Arrakis. There is a lot of sand everywhere. There are still some Harkonnen people that are trying to go out and, you know, clean up the mess of the Fremen people that are running around, who have been disrupting the spice harvesting, which is a bad news. You need spice in the Dune world, Michaela. That's how you travel from planet to planet. On a side note, if anyone didn't know that or remember that from the first part. But we're going to catch back up with Paul and his mother Jessica, and they are well on their way to being fully accepted into this I guess tribe of the Fremen that they found themselves with at the end of the first movie.
I don't care what you believe. I believe.
Yeah. This Fremen, they're up in the north, I believe. Apparently, there's a big difference between kind of the Fremen, just like the world. There's a bunch of different groups of Fremen that we are learning about, and we spend a lot of time in the second film in Dune 2 learning about the differences in their ideologies, in the way that they live. They are all very, very good at figuring out how to save moisture. But we meet Stilgar, who is played by Javier Bardem. We've met him at the beginning of, or at the end of the first film, but we kind of go in and learn more about how they live and what their traditions are. And it turns out that they have a Reverend Mother who is dying. She is very, very old. She looks kind of like a wrinkled sheet of paper with blue eyes. And basically, Stilgar goes to Jessica and says, "Hey, you're a Bene Gesserit. You know, you've got this air about you. I got this great idea. Why don't you replace our Reverend Mother, or you really can just die, because we don't have use for you. We have use for your son, Paul, but you're this is what we can do for you." And Jessica's like, "Yeah, okay, I don't want to die." Turns out Jessica's pregnant. We talk a little bit about that at the end of the last film, so it's no surprise in this one. But that baby zygote thing that's living inside her, all of a sudden is kind of talking to her and telling her, like, asking her questions, giving her advice on like what to do, and it's real weird.
It's like, "Mom, keep me abreast of the situation, Mom." Yeah, for sure, because you know Jessica is tasked then with becoming this new Reverend Mother. And it's not really presented in a sort of, "Do you want to be the Reverend Mother?" It's more like, "Hey, you're our Reverend Mother now," because Jessica is from this group of people here in the Dune world who are more or less kind of like spiritual seers, I guess, within the world. And when she's elected to be the Reverend Mother, they give her this blue stuff. It's called like the water of life or something like that. And basically, it gives you access to like all of the knowledge and like all of the thoughts and dreams of all of the Reverend Mothers that came before you. So now she has a tremendous amount of knowledge of this world. And also, spoiler, she was pregnant. So after she drinks it, that water of life also goes to the unborn child, which is how they're able to kind of communicate, and begins eventually communicating with Paul. It's a little strange to describe when you say it out loud. It sounds weird. Makes sense within the confines of the movie, but Jessica now has the ability to basically prop her son Paul up as the heir apparent to the Fremen world.
And not only the Fremen world, but probably the entire universe, right?
All the worlds.
Right. And so she starts to quietly manipulate things from behind the scenes. She gets these really amazing like face tattoos. She goes all like Post Malone. It's crazy. It's awesome. I gotta say again, the costumes in this film are amazing. I don't know if it's going to get enough accolades because a lot of them are the differences. I mean, you have that water suit thing that sucks up all your moisture and sweat and stuff to keep you alive. But like her Reverend Mother costume is freaking amazing. She's got this headdress with all these feet. She's got these really shimmery like underclothes. It's very different, and it's like much more rich in texture and color. There's a lot of blues and like golds. Really, really special compared, and very, very different, paints a different picture than what they're wearing out in the middle of the desert, which is basically these black kind of gray bodysuits with a mask that makes them look like the dude from Fury Road. Yeah.
Yeah. From Mad Max there. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Her costuming is really cool. I like, kind of the veil pieces there. They're all like beaded and sequined. Looks really, really cool. But that is what Jessica is up to, right? They take her, they cart her off on a worm. She's going south where all, I guess, of the true believers of the Fremen are. There's like millions of Fremen down there. It's very akin to like a Mecca type of a thing where everyone is kind of going to this place to meet the new Reverend Mother. Let's pick up with Paul then a little bit. It's Paul Atreides there. We kind of learned in the previous film, he's trying to learn the ways of the Fremen, wants to go out and lead them. He'd been having visions of leading the Fremen, and that is what he wants to do. And I like kind of in this very first section of the film here, we're picking up kind of with Paul and with Stilgar, putting him through the trials, right? They keep referring to Paul as like an off-worlder, and he's like, I am that, but I want to be a Fremen. I want to be one of you. I want to fight alongside of you. I want to help lead you and help you get your planet back to the promised land. And Stilgar is like fully bought in on this. He totally thinks that Paul Atreides is this Messiah type of a character. He thinks that's exactly who it is. So Stilgar is throwing like all of his support behind him. And you have kind of a little bit of a rift here within the Fremen people that he's traveling with. There are some true believers who want to go off and pray and talk about how great Paul Atreides is, and everything that he does, of course, is exactly how it was written in the stars. And then you have the other group of people, including Chani, played by Zendaya, there, who are not. They're like, this is just some fool that's come in just like all these other fools have come in because they just want our stuff, and all of that stuff. So it's really kind of interesting dynamic play within there. But I really like this section where we're teaching Paul all the things about living in the desert.
This prophecy is how they enslave us.
It's not a prophecy. It's a story.
I don't care what you believe. I believe.
Yeah, we got to talk about the worm riding. I mean, because that scene is one of the most like amazing things I've ever seen, maybe ever. The score behind it is like super empowering. Stilgar's like, hey, dude, like just get on the worm, try not to die, right? And it's like, yeah, okay, I won't show off. But then he gets on, he calls this worm, and he calls this, apparently the worm is like the granddaddy of all worms. It's like bigger than the blue banana. It's so big. And he rides it, and at first we think we're gonna just watch him die, and of course Chani is like, hey, good luck. She really does think that he's gonna die, so she's like, it's nice knowing you. All her friends are like, aren't you worried? And she's like, yeah, he's probably gonna die. I really love that scene. It's really cool. It's very like dusty. I don't know how, from a cinematographic standpoint, I don't know how they created like all of the dust and yet still make it so that you can see. I don't know if they did this in 475 takes or what, because it's super dusty, but you can see what's going on. And I would have thought that would have been really hard to do. I mean, maybe they visually like added some CGI into it to make it look more dusty than it was. I don't know, but they do a great job of that.
Yeah, I don't know if it's computer sand, if it is actual sand, if they're in like a wind tunnel just throwing sand out. That seems unlikely. That seems unlikely to be, hey, Timothy Chalamet, go stand in this wind tunnel full of sand. That seems not good. But yeah, he calls the
Probably.
worm. That's pretty exciting. I like he goes through a couple of trials, right? So he has to like cross the desert at night. Which is fun, and he's going, and yeah, Chani is just sitting there with her pals, and like, yeah, that guy, he's totally going to die. Paul Atreides is totally not going to make it over the night, but he does that. He gets a little bit of lessons from Chani there. She's talking about like harvesting, the water and stuff from this contraption that they have. And then, yeah, the kind of the final test is that you're able to ride one of these giant sandworms.
Have you ever had a dream about your first ride?
Don't try to impress anyone. You're brave, we all know that. Be simple. Be direct.
It's awesome, right? He sets off his little like stick, the like thumps in the ground. I think they're called thumpers. There, and he runs and gets on it. Apparently, it's like the biggest one. It's like what is it? It's like the grandfather worm or the grandmother worm, they call it. And he gets on there. It looks like it would be tough to do, but he makes it on there and rides it. And I'm not sure, but that's when like the chanting part of the music. And I want to say that there wasn't any music in the film until he got on the worm.
Yes, I think you were right. I mean, if you aren't right, I'd be surprised because that part, I just was like, oh, there's the score that I love so much from Hans Zimmer. It's so good. Yeah, this part is so great because you really, I think it's really well paced. We should talk about that. I mean, it's a long movie. It's 2 hours and 45 minutes, right? But
Mhm.
we spend a lot of time really kind of endearing ourselves to how Paul is feeling as one of the group, really trying to embrace the Fremen, and he doesn't want to lead them. They kind of talk about it at the beginning of the film. Stilgar's like, hey, you should lead, you should take my place. He's like, absolutely not. I don't want to do any of that. I don't want to, I want us to all fight. I'll help fight. I
Mhm.
want to become a Fedaykin fighter, but and I'll help like raid all the Harkonnen spice harvesters. Like I'll help set things off and shoot people and fight for you, but I don't want to lead. And I really love that part because it really helps us understand more of what Paul is going through. And it's
Mhm.
also quite endearing for Chani, who ends up kind of at least beginning a relationship with him, right? I love the scene where he and her kind of connect on the sand dune, and he's like, hey, I really I'd love to be worthy of you, or I'd love to make you proud, or I'd love to be somebody that you believe in, or something like that. It was really quite kind of vulnerable. And he, of
Oh
course, it's
yeah.
Timothy Chalamet. He looks like a child, like in a really sweet, innocent way. He's just like, hey, I really like you. And she's like,
Mhm.
maybe. But they end up kind of coupling together, They don't like say they're in love, but you think they're in love.
On that particular kind of rift there, they end up kissing. And there's a couple of moments in here that I really like, especially kind of leading up to that first moment when they have kind of this embrace there. Going through the trials as we mentioned, and Paul ends up riding that worm. So now he's a full-fledged, member of the Fremen people, right? So he takes on his Fremen name, Usul, and Moadib, which is the name of that cute little mouse. I like the little mouse. He gets
Cute little
to see
mouse,
the
little
mouse. The
desert
mouse is
mouse.
the mouse is good. And then they're setting up on the rift, right?
It's breathtaking. When you see sand here, imagine water. If you dive in, you can't reach the bottom.
You dive in.
Yes, it's called swimming.
I don't believe you.
Talking, and I think Chani calls him Usul, and he asks her what her name is, and what is like Desert Rose, I think, or whatever.
Desert
Was
tears.
Desert Tears was meant to mean, and he's like, oh, I love that, and she's like, I hate it. I much prefer Chani, and he says, I much prefer Chani too. Then, which is really really pretty slick line there, Paul Atreides, and you're going to end up getting a smooch from Chani, and you're going to see kind of their relationship start to blossom here over kind of the next like third of the film, right? Which is really just Paul Atreides, sinking himself in as, kind of a not the leader of the Fremen people, but definitely a leader of the Fremen people as they're attacking the spice harvesters and disrupting, the people that are coming in from off-world to harvest the spice, including most regrettably. Who that's happening to is Beast Robin, played by Dave Bautista. He's back. He was left in charge to harvest the spice by his very gross looking uncle there, Baron Harkonnen, played by Stellan Skarsgård again. But Robin's not having a good time, right? This isn't going well.
Yeah.
And we're gonna have to some things are gonna have to change.
Yeah. So you asked at the beginning of this episode of this podcast if I'd ever been given like an impossible task, and then basically had it usurped from me, right? I feel for Robin more than I felt for the House of Atreides, because basically he has nowhere to go. He all of the stuff that had been good about Harkonnen running Arrakis, all of that equipment we don't know if they ever bring it back. They still look like they're using the same like spice collectors that are like really old. And the Fremen are gaining power. They are shooting things up. They're blowing up spice collectors. They're fighting with the Harkonnen kind of soldiers. And I love, it's played so well by Dave Bautista. He just gets so mad, and he's just like, I just want to kill all the Fremen, and we have to kill Paul, and they keep saying that they've killed him, and it's like, but he's obviously not dead, because they still are coming back, and they've got these great new ideas, and they've got these really cool like guns that fire and explode, and these laser beam things that kill everything. So the Baron, who's brilliant and gross. God, he's gross. It's like
pretty gross.
Pretty gross. The Baron decides, this isn't a good idea, and he kind of takes and this is where we start to see all these three kind of storylines kind of compound and combine together, because he takes advice from the Bene Gesserit. And from the first movie, they're the ones who said, hey, we know this is happening to the House of Atreides. We know that the Duke is going to be killed, but we would like to keep Jessica, and we would like to keep Paul. Can we do that somehow, right? And now they're like, hey, obviously Robin is not getting the job done. Who can we control? And they come up with this, Robin's sadistic younger nephew or brother or cousin. I don't know. It's another nephew, and his name is Fade Rotha.
Yeah.
Who is, I might say, even more terrifying than John Batista's Robin, because this guy, he won't yell. He will be super quiet as he removes your body out of your body with a knife after he licks it. It's so nasty. Oh God.
Yeah, for sure. We're introduced to Fade Rotha there back on. I'm not 100% sure what the name of the Harkonnen planet is. Might just be Harkonnen. I'm not sure. The planet design of that is really cool. One of the neat things about Dune, the first Dune, was that you got kind of these different terra firma, right? You're in these different planets and things. Most of this film is set on Arrakis, so it's a lot of sand. So when we go to the different planet, it looks really great, and kind of the big vastness of it is really cool. But yeah, the first time we meet Fade Rotha, played by Elvis himself, Austin Butler, you're like, this guy looks like he's bad news. He doesn't have any eyebrows, which is weird. He licks a knife and then immediately like cuts the throat of like three of like his like handmaidens or whatever they are. They're carrying around him stuff, and he's like, this knife should be sharper. Thanks a lot, guy. And they're going to put him into a ring because it's his birthday, and who doesn't like to do some gladiator style things on your birthday? And they bring out what they think are the last three Atreides people, I guess, that they'd captured from the battle there in the first film, and they come out, and he ends up taking them all out, which is much to the pleasure of old Uncle Baron Harkonnen there. And he says, hey, why don't you go to Arrakis, get the spice production in control, and when you do that, I'm going to let the rest of the galaxy know that the Emperor hired us to take out the Atreides. And then when the rest of the universe says, that's bad, Emperor, get out of there, Fade Rotha can take over. That sounds like a pretty sweet gig. That sounds like a good gig.
Yeah, yeah. And of course, Fade Routha is like, yeah, all right, sounds great. So so all of that is kind of building up. What I find interesting is that we also see the Bene Gesserit, they bring this woman, Lady Margot Fenring. She shows up and she's like, hey, Fade Routha, I mean, you don't scare me at all. She's got some lady balls, I will say.
She's
She's got some gumption
stone cold, yeah.
because I mean, there's no way I'd be like, yeah, somebody else could do this. But she performs the same experiment or exercise on Fade Routha that is performed on Paul in Dune 1 with the little box and the hand and the thing that could kill him. And apparently Fade Routha won that because he's still alive. But he also, I don't know. We don't see what happened, but Lady Margot is like, hey, I've secured the bloodline.
They do some sort of deed, I think.
They do something, and she's like, you know, we got the bloodline, we're okay. And we think that we can control Fade Routha. We think that he could be the path forward because Paul, that's why we had to get rid of the House Atreides, is because they're real feisty and they don't like to be controlled.
That's right, absolutely. So basically we're going to go back to Arrakis then. Fade Routha now is in charge of the spice production, which is good for the Harkonnen because things are going good. And really they're not going good because Fade Routha is good at his job. Really it's going good because Paul Atreides now has finally been convinced that he should go south, you know, potentially as the leader of the Fremen people. So they all pack up, they all go south, and that's where things are going to really sort of take a turn for Paul Atreides, who has been, you know, really, you know, kind of the mindset that he doesn't want to be the leader of the Fremen people. But his mom knows, Jessica knows. She's like, there's going to be a man that comes here. You're going to give him this blue elixir of life or whatever it was called. You're not going to want to give it to him because it's supposed to kill men, but you're going to anyways, because that's my son Paul. He can handle it, and I've been telling everyone that he's meant to lead these people. And that's what happens. He does. He gets poisoned by this stuff, but luckily, you know, the tears of Chani are going to bring him back to life. And at this point, Paul now has all of this knowledge. He has all of this gumption, and Paul has bought into this tale that Jessica has been weaving for him throughout the film.
Yeah. And it's interesting because you almost feel like you see so much of this happening in other shows that are now getting tons of accolades, right? Like Game of Thrones, House of Cards, like this idea of intrigue and people in your own house that are supposed to support you, but they will do it at all costs. And Paul is his visions are of this person, and you at the beginning you can't really tell who the person is, but he's like, I'm gonna kill millions of people if I ascend the throne. I don't want to do that. And then as we get closer and closer to the end of the film, we realize that that person is his mother, that, you know, even though she loves him and has been setting him up to rule because she believes in him, she does not care how many people, millions of people die, because she wants that for her son. She wants him to rule and overtake the emperor, really. And so she and him have this discussion where she's like, look, there's a way to make this happen. You need to accept the way to make this happen. And he's like, absolutely. At first he's indignant and says no. And the Bene Gesserit also are having this conversation with Princess Irulan, right? Saying the same thing to her. Like, hey, you want to save the empire. You want to secure yourself somewhere. If your father dies, you're kind of screwed. So there's a way to do this. And the way to do that is for y'all to couple up and get married.
That's right. Yeah. Mom has done quite the job of laying this path forward for Paul. And Paul is basically going to find himself bought into it hook, line, and sinker here at this point. Before they go south, we actually are reintroduced to Gurney Halleck, who apparently didn't die in the first film in the war there. He's doing some just on the side spice harvesting. You know, if the Harkonnen are not good at harvesting spice, he can get in there and make some bucks, and they're reunited. He finds he finds Paul and lets him know that he has access to this big arsenal, so he can blow up the spice fields if he felt so inclined. And that's a really good way to control it. That was one of the lessons that he learned from his father in the first film, right? The person that has real power over something is the one that can destroy it. So he has that little tidbit in his back pocket there, and everything's kind of coming to a head, right? So we've got the Harkonnen there who now have found out that Paul Atreides is still alive. Oops, weren't supposed to leave any of the Atreides alive. That's bad news. Now you've got the Emperor and Princess Irulan are coming down to Arrakis. Everyone's kind of coming to a head here at this point. Kind of the journey of Paul. Michaela, I don't know if you picked up on this or kind of thought the same way. His story and the trajectory of his story is they're so similar to Lawrence, his story in Lawrence of Arabia, where he's kind of going and not meant to be, kind of the leader of these people. Really, just wants to unite these people out in the deserts, and then eventually just keeps more and more buying into his own hype. That's kind of very similar to what's happening to Paul here. So I don't know if you kind of picked up on that same kind of story element there. Lawrence of Arabia, a film that we've covered, came out in 1962. So I think it might have been pretty fresh on the mind of Frank Herbert when he was writing his story there in 1965, I think it was. So I don't know.
I don't know. I think you're right. I didn't pick up on Lawrence of Arabia, but now that you say it, I wish I had. I do think that this idea of this person that is kind of carving out their themselves in a life that they didn't choose, but not wanting to lead, and then getting to the point where once they get to lead, making that choice and figuring out how far they're willing to go to either be true to themselves or do what's their destiny is for the people, that's a really compelling story. And I think that it ended showing itself really beautifully at the end when there's a symbol of Paul's signet ring, right? Where he's wearing it and then he hides it and then he puts it back on again. And then he's using it to announce himself and say, hey, I'm still alive. And not only am I still alive, but I'm now the leader of the Fremen, and this is what I want. And now your boy's dead. So what are you going to do about it? Kind of thing. And everybody's going to war. I really think that there are so many other stories that probably found their home in this one. And it's probably more than we could count on this podcast, because there were so many similarities. I mean, to shows, I mean, even Breaking Bad kind of, it had this almost this Breaking Bad feel where he's like, I'm just doing this for a while. And then it's like, haha, no, I'm not, I'm going to do it forever.
Yeah. And he sends word off planet there. And that's going to bring everyone there to kind of this ultimate thing there. And I don't know, so like the capital of the South there on Arrakis, and everyone's there hanging out. You even have Baron Harkonnen who is there, and I really like you have the Emperor who's looking at him and is like, you're supposed to kill all of these guys. You messed up pretty bad. And then like his soldier like cuts the balloon cord thing that's helping Baron Harkonnen upright, because I don't know, he weighs like 200 kilograms or something, allegedly, I think in the book is what he weighed. So he can't really move around, but even there at his own death, he's still trying to like climb and crawl his way up the stairs to the throne. Everyone's kind of eyeballing this throne. And about this time, the Fremen come in and attack, and Paul Atreides is presented himself in front of the Emperor, and he says, you killed my dad, that's bad news, so I'm going to go ahead and stab Baron Harkonnen, one guy down there. And he goes over to the Emperor and says, listen, you messed up, that's bad, but I'm going to throw you a bone right here. I'm going to marry your daughter. To which Chani says, what are you talking about? You told me, loved me until your last breath, and now you're like, Florence Pugh is the one to pick instead. What?
You told me that we would be forever when we were covered in sand underneath that tent.
Yep.
That has to count for something.
It counts for something.
I
It counts for nothing. Maybe it counts for something. We'll have to wait for the next one. But
have to
yeah,
see.
I loved that. And then you had kind of this dynamic then across the room of all these people looking on at him as to what's going to happen. And the Emperor not keen to accept this necessarily, but also not keen to stand up for himself. So who do you call in? You call in Fade Routha to fight in your stead. And that's going to be kind of the last action here of this film is you're going blade to blade until my blade chips or something, says Paul Atreides as he pulls out his sandworm knife and dance to the death.
Yeah. Yeah, it doesn't go well. I mean, it's really beautifully choreographed, I will say.
It is beautifully choreographed. Yeah, Fade Routha comes out, I guess, as the champion for the Emperor there, and they have their hand-to-hand combat. I really love this because everyone is standing around, and you just see Chani kind of looking on, basically like shell-shocked, and I. She's great. Zendaya is amazing in this. Like she just has like this weight in her eyes. Like she's so disappointed in herself that she like fell for this guy who she thought was really in it for the right reasons, and now she's just seen like in the last 20 minutes of the film that he's just turned this all on his head, right? It's he wasn't the one that she thought that he was, that she was had convinced herself that he was, or he had convinced herself of. And I thought that was beautiful. And then ultimately Paul Atreides takes a knife to the chest, but Fade Routha takes a deeper one to the chest, I guess, and Paul Atreides gets the one up, goes off. They send word to the out the other universe, the other planets there. It says Paul Atreides is now the now the Emperor, basically, and they say no, he's not. We don't care what he says. But I guess him and Princess Irulan are in for the long haul now. Chani out. She's like, get me out of here. Everyone's kneeling. They're like, all hail our new Emperor. And Chani's like, nah, I'm out of here. I'm out of
Nah,
here.
man, I'm out. Nope. He broke my
Got a
heart.
worm to
Yeah.
catch. I'm out of here.
Well, and she does. I love, again, her acting has been really impressive, and I don't know why I found it much more compelling than some of the other stuff that she's done. Her change, right?
She takes a much more centered role in this film. I think if you've read the book, she's not really I mean, she's an important part of the story, but it's very much, Paul's story. But it seems like Chani here in this telling is getting a little bit more kind of the focus on her journey as well, especially like her
right.
emotional journey in the film.
For sure. And I really love that because we get to really see her brokenness at the end, where she's just like, you're right. She's mad at herself. She's mad at him. She really is just viscerally angry at Jessica because she knows that this is all Jessica's doing. If Jessica had just been a reverend mother and left it alone, that Paul would not be where he is. And maybe that's the right thing, right? Because we still don't know if Jessica is doing this because she really thinks that this is the right thing to do and like the right thing overall for the good of the universe, or if she's like, my son, let's make him the Emperor. It's very strange. You don't see a lot of her motivations, but you do see, like, I don't know, it really brought to mind all of the things that we learn about her in Dune 1 and Dune 2, right? So she was not the Duke's wife. She was kind of his concubine, right? She was his lover. She made the decision to give birth to a boy instead of a girl. Apparently you can decide that in this universe, but that's cool. She made that decision. She told the Bene Gesserit that, and her higher ups within her order, that she should have a boy. Has she been doing this, for decades? Has she been manipulating this whole thing for decades? And to what end was she doing it? And it really does kind of create, at the beginning of Dune 1, you're like, mommy, like she's this amazing mom who loves her son. And by the end of this, you see her the way that Chani sees her, which is like you usurper, right? You manipulative, horrible person who just doesn't care about the people that are going to follow him, your son, into death.
Yeah, there's the beautiful scene kind of when the Fremen people there that Paul and Chani are with get south, and Paul is poisoned by this stuff, and Jessica knows that the only way to revive him from this poison is to basically to have her tears there. And Chani doesn't want to do it. Chani is like, no, he's an idiot. He messed up. You're an idiot. You made him do this. So no, you fix this, Jessica. And Jessica says, no, you have to do it. And she does it, so begrudgingly. And then, it's kind of at that point, then obviously we see Paul go on to take over, the leadership of these people, which is a really, powerful scene where he's going and, recollecting the memories of the Fremen people here who are meant to be challenging him in this moment. And, pulls them, all under his control. And you get that very, very glamorous shot from the trailer where he goes up on top of that ridge and there's just like a million of these people, chanting to go to war for him. And that's what's probably going to happen in Dune Part 3, because we're left now with Paul and Princess Irulan, I guess, are going to be I don't know about happily wed, but they're going to be spending some time together, I guess. Chani is in a bad mood. We'll see what her story has in mind for us, but we're getting ready to start the Holy War. So Dune Part 1 definitely ends on a cliffhanger. This one is a little bit more complete. I mean, I guess if it's kind of wrapping up the first book, here more or less, you're left with a conclusion, but it's still not like a satisfying conclusion. Like, you still feel like I need to get more of the story to get like a full breadth of what these people's tales are.
I do feel like this was a very solid second half of this apparent trilogy that is going to happen, right? I feel like it really enriched the characters. It really created even more so than the first one. The art direction is just amazing, where all the different worlds have their own personalities. And I don't mean like in Star Wars, which no dig on that, but like they are very, like, the detail around their the signets and the costuming and just kind of I don't know. I just think that this did a really special job of creating an enrichment to the first film. Just a feast for your eyes, even though it's a desert. It's very luscious somehow. It just, I couldn't get enough of looking at some of the shots and thinking about the way, I mean, we've only watched, it's been 24 hours, but thinking about the way in which some of these things were filmed and the decisions that they made. I mean, we kind of glossed over it, but the scene that's basically a gladiator scene is mesmerizing to me. Just so cool. The way that they basically recreated this whole idea of a stadium and what that would look like, and what, and it's on Harkonnen, so it's a little bit different, and the austerity of it.
Yeah, the color goes out. The color goes out of it. It has this real stark contrast to it, and then just the scope of it is just absolutely huge. I mean, you've been seeing like the huge like desert pieces, obviously, where just sand is going on forever, but it's really, you get the scope of it when you're going into the cities, or even on like Arrakis at the end when they're fighting like over top, and they have the little like dragonfly ships, and they're flying through the city, and that's when you're really getting like the scope of how big this world is that Denis Villeneuve has created.
And also, like, from a character development standpoint, right, how much deeper and richer this is, because at the beginning, in the first one, it's basically just Paul and his mom trying to stay alive for like the second half of it, right, where they're like, we gotta figure this out. We gotta, I'm gonna try and like fly this thing that I've never flown before. I'm gonna, put on this suit that I've never done before. And so it's a lot of just kind of survival mode, which is great. But this one is much more deeper in like, what is this about? What are the motivations behind each and every character? And, what's the next step going to be for Paul? Because you really don't know at the end. He's, where he's going. He made the choice to kind of couple up with Princess Irulan, but you don't know if he's doing that because he really thinks that's the right way, or if he thinks that's the only way. He doesn't seem bothered that Chani is leaving him. He's just kind of like, hey, this is where I'm at. And you're puzzled by it as a person watching, because you've also kind of fallen in love with the idea of Paul being this person that is wise and true and good, and not a power-hungering, power-monger person, right?
Yeah, and that stems back to a conversation that he had with Jessica, with his mother there at the very kind of beginning of the film. I think before she was even, promoted up to the Reverend Mother, and she's telling him that there's a way forward, and that's for you to marry someone, right? To unify the houses, which is very Game of Thronesian and all of that sort of stuff there too, which is really cool. But yeah, it did such a good job of like laying the groundwork here as this middle piece where it's like this is kind of the stuff that happens, and really, I mean, we went through the story, and there's a lot that happens because it's 2 hours and 40 minutes, but really there's not like that much, I guess, right? Paul becomes a member of the tribe, says he doesn't want to lead them, and ultimately is leading them at the end of the film, but it doesn't, like, there's no like resolution to any of this stuff, so it's really just like how long until Doom Part 3 comes out is what you're left with. At the end of Doom Part 1, that felt like a closed off enough kind of a story where you were left satiated a little bit, right? So you kind of got to where the characters were going at the end of this one or that one, but this time around, I'm like, man, how long? I guess I'll just read the book until then. But
Yeah, because they didn't film. I want to say that they filmed these at the same time, kind of like they did with Lord of the Rings, but that's not the case, right? I mean, they
yeah, I
all
don't.
look the same, and it literally looks like they did because we start the film minutes after the first one ends.
Mhm. Yeah,
But I
it's
don't think
it's
that's
it's coming
that's
right
the
on the
case
right on the
here.
heels of it. No, I think they filmed them separately. I mean, so 2001 to 2003, which is when this was supposed to come out, got pushed back for the strike, and I want to talk about that here for a second too, before we sign off, Michaela. But yeah, so I guess in theory we could be looking at like 2026, 2027, for the third installment. Maybe they're on to the next one. We got a little bit of a tease for Paul's sister, Anya Taylor-Joy. I want to say, if memory serves me correct, there's like a 12-year time jump. So Anya Taylor-Joy would be too old, I guess, to fulfill that time jump. So I'll have to see how that plays out, how that's handled there in terms of his sister there, I guess, potentially in a third part, how that works. But I mentioned want to talk about this real quick here. The strike pushed this back. Mentioned this was supposed to come out in October. It was going to be the heavyweights swinging there. If I would have, we just did our pick 'em yesterday to look for. Hopefully, you've listened to that and enjoyed the Oscars. They've happened by the time you're listening to this. But if we would have had to have done our pick 'em, and I would have had to pick between Christopher Nolan's Oppenheimer and Denis Villeneuve's Doom Part 2, I probably would have thrown in the towel. I'd have been like, I can't do Oscars anymore. This is too much. Too much.
Can't do it, Michaela. We got to quit. No, you would have picked Oppenheimer. But yeah, I don't know, man. It's probably all for the best. It's all there. It's the universe. What did she say? What does Jessica say? The divine universe knows what it wants, or something like that. It knew what it wanted, and it knew that these two films couldn't be in the same award ceremony. So, you know,
Yeah.
it figured it out that way. Good luck next year. I feel real bad because this is early in. I mean, it's Oscar season of the previous year, right? When this
Mhm.
comes out. I don't know, man. The big shoes to fill for anybody getting to this, because it's so good and it's
Yeah.
so worthy. It just hits on all those levels, right?
Yeah,
Mm.
for sure. It felt a touch long, maybe a time or two, but I'm definitely excited to go back and watch it again. And now that it's available to watch, we actually did a Dune part one rewatch. You watched it a couple times because your kid wanted to watch it, but we watched it together last week and then saw this. But it's going to be really something, I think, to watch them just back to back. Just set yourself in for 6 hours of straight of Dune, but I think that's going to be okay. So, yeah, that is Dune Part 2. Really good. Go see it if you haven't seen it. And check it out. And check out the Spice Must Flow cocktail if you want to have a good cocktail, or if you have a good Dune cocktail, send that our way. You can do that on our social medias. It's at Drink the Movies on Instagram and X and Threads and Blue Sky and Facebook.com/Drink the Movies. If you want to see pictures of our cocktail, episode recaps, the links to Patreon and Drink the Video Games, all that stuff, that's on our website. It's www.drinkthemovies.com. We definitely appreciate everyone there and everyone who participated in our Oscar pick'em. That was a lot of fun to go through and talk about the Oscars over there. Michaela, if people are not subscribed to the podcast for some reason, where can they do that? And it would be awesome if they wanted to go ahead and leave us a review, because that helps people find the podcast more. So where can they do that?
You can find us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Good Pods, anywhere where your rectangle will take you for podcasts. Whatever you're listening to us on right now, there is a like button, there's a subscribe button, there's a review button. Press that. Give us a review, even if it's like 3 sentences. They are amazing. 3 words, easy. Nothing bad. If you don't like us, don't bother. But if you like us, let us know, because that really helps us get the Drink the Movies out there. We are really knocked out every day. I wake up so grateful that I'm able to do this podcast with you, Brian. It's so awesome, and we can't do it without our listeners telling other people
That's
about
right.
us.
Absolutely. Yeah. There's some weird podcast magic that happens when you leave reviews. I can't explain it. Just like I can't explain how riding a worm looked real hard, but somehow you can get like a tent and like 50 people also in a worm at the same time. I don't understand how that works. Maybe we'll cover that in Dune
Touche.
Part 3. If you know, if you're a worm riding expert out there, let us know that too. Thank you so much for joining us. This was fun. Check out patreon.com/drinkthemovies. We're going to be talking about the Dune, 1984 Dune. That's going to be great. It's not starring, what's his name? Not starring David Lynch. That's a director, Michaela. But we'll get into all that. So I'll give Michaela a hard time over there on that episode for sure. So that'll be fun. Thank you so much for joining us. Check out Doom Part 2, and we'll talk to you next time on
Drink the Movies. Let him try. When she says "let him try" like that, when she's talking to the guy about the water of life.
Yeah.
Let him try. It was like Batman on steroids. Woo.
Yeah. Jessica's Benny Gesserit voice is it's not to be trifled with.
Scary.